I never thought I'd find myself standing in front of the old psychiatric hospital, its crumbling facade looming over us like a dark specter. My friends and I had been talking about this place for weeks, fueled by tales of ghostly apparitions and the whispered secrets of those who once roamed its hallways. We were a group of thrill seekers, always searching for the next adrenaline rush, but this time felt different. There was Jake, the daredevil of our group, always pushing us to take risks. His excitement was contagious, and I could see his eyes sparkle with mischief as he suggested we venture inside. Next to him was Lily, the skeptic, who had a knack for debunking urban legends. She rolled her eyes at Jake's enthusiasm but couldn't hide her curiosity. Then there was Sam, the quiet one, who often surprised us with his bravery when it counted the most. I had no doubt that his love for horror stories was what brought him along for the ride. As we stood there, the cool wind rustling the leaves around us, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. The stories about the hospital were chilling, whispers of patients who never left, the cries of the tormented echoing through the empty halls, and the shadows that seemed to move on their own. Still, we were determined to uncover the truth behind the legends. Are we really doing this? I asked, glancing around at my friends. Of course. Jake replied, grinning widely. What's the worst that could happen? It's just an old building. I forced a smile, trying to shake off the feeling of unease creeping up my spine. We all stepped closer, our flashlights piercing through the thickening darkness as we approached the entrance. The heavy door creaked open, and we took our first steps into the unknown, unaware of the horrors that awaited us inside. As we pushed the heavy door open, a cloud of musty air hit us like a wall. I could barely see anything past the threshold, but the dim glow of our flashlights illuminated the peeling wallpaper and cracked tiles beneath our feet. My heart raced, both from excitement and a growing sense of foreboding. Wow, this place is even creepier than I imagined, Lily muttered, her voice echoing slightly in the silence. I couldn't tell if she was more fascinated or terrified. The entrance hall was vast, with high ceilings that seemed to stretch into darkness. Dust motes floated in the air, dancing in the beams of our flashlights. The first thing I noticed was the unsettling quiet. There were no signs of life, no scurrying rats or creaking wood, just an eerie stillness that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Let's stick together, Sam said, glancing nervously at the shadows that stretched along the walls. He was always the cautious one, and I appreciated his concern. We moved deeper into the building, our footsteps echoing off the faded tiles. Each step felt heavy, as if the very air was thickening around us. I tried to shake off the feeling that we were being watched, but the thought clung to me like a shadow. Over here. Jake called, excitement bubbling in his voice. He had spotted a set of stairs leading down into the bowels of the hospital. I hesitated for a moment, the idea of going underground sending a chill down my spine. Maybe we should explore the upper floors first? I suggested, but Jake was already bounding down the stairs, confident and eager. Come on. We can't chicken out now, he shouted back, and with a reluctant sigh we followed. As we descended, the air grew colder, wrapping around us like a thick blanket of dread. Each step felt more ominous than the last, the dim light barely illuminating the way. When we finally reached the bottom, a long corridor stretched out before us, lined with doors that stood slightly ajar, as if inviting us to peek inside. Let's check out a room, Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. I exchanged worried glances with Lily and Sam, but curiosity got the better of us. We stepped forward, ready to confront whatever lay beyond those doors, unaware of the secrets that had been waiting for us all along. The corridor felt like a labyrinth, stretching endlessly into darkness. The faint sound of our footsteps echoed around us, amplifying the eerie silence that surrounded us. I shone my flashlight down the hall, illuminating the peeling paint and rusted metal fixtures. Each beam revealed more details of the place's haunting past, faded photographs of former patients, abandoned wheelchairs, and remnants of forgotten lives. Look at this, Jake said, stopping abruptly at the first door on our left. He pushed it open, and it creaked loudly, sending a shiver down my spine. Inside, the room was a time capsule of decay. Dust-covered furniture lay scattered about, and a rusted bed frame stood in the corner, the mattress long gone. Creepy, right? He said, grinning as he stepped inside. I followed hesitantly, trying to ignore the way the shadows seemed to shift around us. What do you think happened to all the patients? Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I could tell she was trying to keep her skepticism alive, but even she couldn't mask the unease in her tone. I don't know, but I bet it's not pretty, I replied, scanning the room for any signs of life, or whatever might remain of it. Suddenly, I heard a faint noise coming from down the hallway. It sounded like a soft whimper, almost like someone was crying. My heart raced. Did you guys hear that? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Probably just the wind, Jake shrugged, but I could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. We stepped back into the hallway, and I noticed that the air had turned cold, biting at my skin. A shiver ran through me as I realized we had left the safety of the light. The further we moved into the hospital, the darker it became. As we explored more rooms, I found myself growing increasingly uneasy. In one room, I discovered a diary lying open on a dusty desk. The pages were yellowed and frayed, filled with scrawled handwriting that spoke of despair and hopelessness. I read a few lines aloud, and the atmosphere around us shifted. The stories told of torment and fear, echoing the legends we had heard before. Guys, this is unsettling, Sam said, his voice shaky. I think we should head back. This place feels wrong. Just then, I heard the noise again, this time clearer and more pronounced. It was definitely a cry, echoing through the corridor. My stomach dropped. We can't ignore that, I said, glancing at my friends. What if someone needs help? Jake hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his face, but curiosity won out. Let's check it out. It could be someone who got lost. Reluctantly, we moved deeper into the darkness, drawn by the sound that seemed to beckon us. The air grew colder still, and with every step, I could feel the weight of the hospital's history pressing down on us. We were no longer just explorers. We had become part of a story woven with shadows and secrets, and I feared what we might uncover next. As we followed the sound down the dimly lit corridor, my heart pounded in my chest. Each step felt heavier, the air growing thicker as if the hospital itself was alive and watching us. I glanced back at my friends, their faces a mix of excitement and fear, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were stepping into something far beyond our understanding. Are we sure we want to do this? Lily whispered, her voice trembling. What if it's just some prank? Before I could respond, Jake took the lead, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. We can't turn back now. We have to find out what's going on. The crying grew louder, echoing off the walls like a mournful wail. I couldn't tell where it was coming from, but it felt close, too close. The oppressive silence of the hospital was broken only by the sound, and it filled me with an unsettling dread. We turned a corner, and the corridor opened up into a large room, the kind that must have been a common area once. Torn-up chairs lay scattered about, and remnants of old games and toys were strewn across the floor. But it was the chilling sight at the far end of the room that froze me in my tracks. A shadowy figure stood near a broken window, illuminated just enough by our flashlights to reveal its outline. It seemed to be hunched over, as if in despair. The crying stopped abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. Is that a person? Sam asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to say yes, to convince myself that it was just another lost soul like us. But deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. I don't think we should get any closer, I cautioned, my voice shaking. But Jake, ever the fearless one, stepped forward. Hey, are you okay? He called out, his bravado masking his fear. As if in response, the figure turned slowly, revealing a face that was pale and hollow, with sunken eyes that seemed to pierce right through us. I felt a chill run down my spine, and my instinct screamed at me to run. Suddenly, the figure raised a hand, pointing directly at us. The air grew cold, and I could see my breath fogging in front of me. Help me, it whispered, the voice barely audible, yet it echoed like a thunderclap in the stillness. Run! I shouted, panic rising in my throat. I turned to bolt back down the corridor, and I felt a rush of air as if something had swept past me. The doors that had previously been ajar slammed shut one by one, trapping us inside. We need to get out of here, Lily yelled, her eyes wide with terror. We rushed toward the nearest door, but it wouldn't budge. It felt like we were being surrounded by an unseen force. I turned back to the figure, and for a split second, I saw a flash of sorrow in its eyes. It was as if it were begging us for help, but I couldn't shake the fear that gripped me. Keep pushing, Jake shouted, his voice filled with urgency. We pressed against the door with all our might, panic setting in as the cries echoed around us. The sound seemed to come from all directions, growing louder and more frantic. Finally, with one last shove, the door swung open, and we stumbled out into the corridor, gasping for breath. We didn't look back. The darkness was alive, and I could feel it closing in on us. We sprinted down the hall, desperate to escape the horrors that lurked within the shadows, knowing that whatever we had encountered would not let us go easily. We raced down the corridor, our hearts pounding in sync with our frantic footsteps. I could hear the echoes of our breaths, sharp and ragged, as fear propelled us forward. The cold air wrapped around us, making it feel as if the very walls were closing in, urging us to turn back. Where do we go? Lily gasped, glancing around in panic. The hallways twisted and turned, each path looking the same, shadows dancing menacingly at the edges of our flashlights' beams. I felt an overwhelming urge to scream, to shout for help, but all I could manage was a breathless whisper. Just keep moving. Jake urged, leading the way. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the image of that figure, the sorrowful eyes that seemed to haunt me even now. We stumbled into a room that looked like it once served as an office. Old files lay scattered across a desk, papers yellowed with age, and a chair tipped over in a corner. The air felt different here, thicker, as if the shadows had gathered to listen to our breaths. Maybe we should hide here for a moment, Sam suggested, glancing nervously at the door. I could see the fear etched on his face, mirroring my own. No, we can't stop, I said, feeling a mix of dread and determination. We have to find a way out. But deep down, I knew we had to confront whatever was haunting this place. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. Our flashlights flickered, then died, leaving us in a suffocating blackness. A cold chill enveloped us, and I felt an icy breeze that seemed to swirl around my ankles. Jake, turn on your light, I urged, my voice rising in panic. It won't work. Mine just died too, he shouted back, his voice laced with fear. In that moment, we were engulfed by the silence. Then a low, mournful cry echoed through the darkness, vibrating in my bones. Help me, the voice was hauntingly familiar, pulling at my heart. Without thinking, I took a step forward. What do you need? I called out, my voice trembling. What can we do? The shadows shifted, and I felt a presence brush past me, cold and heavy. I shuddered but pressed on, driven by a strange compulsion. Show us. I pleaded, hoping against hope that this was just a nightmare. The figure materialized in front of us, illuminated by an otherworldly glow that seemed to seep from the walls. It was the same pale figure we had seen before, but now it looked more defined, its expression a blend of sorrow and desperation. Help me escape, it whispered, its voice echoing in the air like a chilling breeze. I felt a wave of empathy wash over me, mixed with the icy grip of fear. Escape from what? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Trapped, like us, it replied, and in that moment I understood. This was not just a spirit seeking revenge or chaos, it was a soul longing for freedom. Suddenly, the room around us began to tremble, the walls shaking as if the hospital itself was alive. We need to help it, I shouted, but as I looked around, I could see the fear on my friends' faces. No, we can't. Lily cried, her voice breaking. We don't even know what we're dealing with. But something in me was drawn to the figure. I stepped closer, feeling the cold air wrap around me, pulling me in. We can't leave it here, I insisted, looking back at my friends. We have to try. The figure pointed down the hall, where a faint light flickered. Find the truth, it urged, its voice echoing in my mind. Break the cycle. Without a second thought, I took a deep breath and dashed toward the light, my friends reluctantly following. The corridor twisted and turned, and with every step, the temperature dropped, the shadows growing more menacing. As we neared the light, I felt a surge of hope mixed with trepidation. What awaited us at the end of this journey? Would we uncover the truth that bound this spirit to its torment? Stick together, I shouted, glancing back at my friends. We needed to face whatever lay ahead together, or risk being consumed by the darkness that threatened to swallow us whole. As we raced toward the flickering light, the air around us grew charged with energy. My heart pounded in my chest, a relentless drumbeat of fear and determination. Each step felt like a leap into the unknown, but I knew we had to push through the terror that enveloped us. Finally, we reached a large room at the end of the corridor, illuminated by a soft, ethereal glow that seemed to emanate from the very walls. It was breathtaking yet unsettling, a stark contrast to the darkness we had just escaped. In the center of the room stood an old, cracked mirror, reflecting the ghostly light. The surface shimmered as if it held secrets just beneath its surface. "What is this place?" Sam asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "This must be it," I replied, my gaze locked on the mirror. "The truth." As we stepped closer, the figure appeared beside the mirror, its sorrowful expression almost pleading. "Free me," it whispered, and I could feel its desperation wrapping around me like a cold fog. "Okay, what do we do?" Jake asked, his bravado fading as the gravity of the situation set in. I remembered the diary I had seen earlier, the pain and suffering penned within its pages. "Maybe we need to acknowledge what happened here," I suggested. "We need to understand the pain of those who suffered in this place." The figure nodded, its form flickering with hope. "Remember me. Remember us." Gathering my courage, I reached out and placed my hand on the mirror's surface. The moment my skin touched the cold glass, memories flooded my mind. Visions of the hospital's past, echoes of cries and laughter, and the anguished faces of those who had been trapped here. I gasped, overwhelmed by the raw emotion that surged through me. "We see you," I cried out, feeling a connection with the lost souls. "We acknowledge your pain." As I spoke, the room vibrated, and the air crackled with energy. The shadows that had once loomed menacingly around us began to recede, drawn to the light that now enveloped the mirror. The figure's expression softened, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of peace in its eyes. "Thank you," it whispered, the voice fading into the air. The shadows twisted and swirled before dissipating completely, leaving behind an overwhelming silence that felt almost serene. I stumbled back, breathless. "Did we do it?" I asked, looking at my friends. "I think we did," Lily replied, her voice a mix of disbelief and relief. But just as I began to feel a sense of triumph, a loud crash echoed from behind us. The heavy door we had entered through slammed shut, shaking the ground beneath our feet. The mirror's glow flickered, and for a brief moment, I was terrified we hadn't escaped yet. "Let's go," Jake shouted, and we rushed to the door, frantically pushing against it. It wouldn't budge. Panic clawed at my throat as I felt the walls closing in once more. Suddenly, the mirror brightened, casting a warm light throughout the room. I turned to see the figure one last time, now more defined and radiant. "You are free," it said softly. "You have broken the cycle." With those words, the door flew open, and a gust of wind rushed through the room, carrying away the last remnants of darkness. We stumbled out into the corridor, gasping for breath, and as we turned to look back, the room was fading, the mirror vanishing into the ether. We emerged into the cool night air, the moonlight washing over us like a cleansing balm. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the hospital lift from my shoulders. "What just happened?" Sam asked, still trying to process it all. "I think we helped them," I replied, my voice filled with awe. "We helped them find peace." As we walked away from the hospital, the silence around us felt different, lighter, somehow. The shadows that had once seemed menacing were now just remnants of a past long forgotten. I realized we had faced something far more significant than mere ghosts. We had confronted the pain of history and brought a little light into the darkness. But even as we left, I couldn't shake the feeling that the memories of those who had suffered there would always linger, reminding us that the past is never truly gone. It lives on in our hearts, waiting to be remembered.